Hey all, so sorry for the delays. We have been doing things. I got employed, yay! But I also got employed during a very busy time at this job. So I've been working 6, 7 days a week. So I was struck with a tremendous. First, I was struck with a tremendous amount of writer's block, and then I got hit with yellow season. Around here, that means basically pollen 24/7, all the pollen.
So, like, the color of our wall back there? Our gray car was that color.
It really was. And we're surrounded by trees and other things. In fact, I still have a rough voice because of it. And so there was probably about 2 months when I couldn't really talk that well.
Month and a half.
It was terrible.
I got hit for about a week.
I got hit. I was laid out like I hit the flu for like 2 weeks. In fact, I was supposed to start a job in a restaurant and I was hacking up gunk. And I called the restaurant. I'm like, I can't come in. I get you. And they were like, yeah, you stay out. And I got to contact them and say, I can't actually take the job because I now got to finally break and go, so remember that part-time job that was supposed to come in when I could? Yeah, I'm so busy I can't come in. Which I guess is good. And so, yeah, and so now it's kind of the first break. And I started looking over, I have a list, I've probably mentioned it several times, I have a list of video ideas. And honestly, sometimes I see them and I'm like, those aren't very long or I don't really have an answer. People ask me things. And so what this video is going to be, is this going to be Omnibus, like the title says, Omnibus. And that means I will be doing many things at once. So I have my wife. And so the first one from Ian Laspina of the YouTube channel Knights Errant, who asked me this, and I wish I was kidding, about 3 years ago, I recall. Ian's probably going to say, what took you so long?
Did I really ask that?
Yeah, did
was
he really
probably
ask
be
that?
the question.
He asked it back when we lived in Reno, and we've since moved to Boston and now here to the South, as we've mentioned. Anyway, so here's what it is. I will read the whole of his question first, and then we will get to it. In your experience, do people with Asperger's react to the connotation of word choice? For example, in political discussion, the term liberal causes emotional reaction, or using terms like gun control cause people to react more negatively, whereas political reform polls well with people regardless of the actual content of what's being done. Are people with Asperger's immune to word choice? Politicians, businesses spend a lot of money researching word choice because of its emotional response in people. Do you find that you are just as susceptible to this as neurotypicals to use your term? In answer, initially, yes, and yes, I'm susceptible. No, I'm not immune. I have noticed that Aspies, as we've mentioned, tend to go full speed ahead with something. So noticed tendency. Okay, I'm couching my terms and generalities because not everybody's like this. It's actually a much smaller, if you're thinking of a Venn circle, it's much smaller than you'd otherwise assume because of the wide variety in Aspies. And it basically goes, yes, I can get other Aspies to react certain ways by using my words in certain ways. I can get neurotypicals to perform that more typically if I'm on the ball. Like if I'm trying to go for an effect, I'm trying to manipulate them into a certain answer, a certain idea, a certain thought, lead them there, then sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. People are people. And that's why the gift of gab and the gift of sales and the gift of all that, not only is it hard study, but it is a real talent and it's your brain working a certain way. And well, David Finch, as it turns out, the author of Journal of Best Practices, turns out to be a really good salesman because he can intellectualize it to a certain point. Aspies are rarely good salesmen, like really rarely. He's one, so therefore the exception that proves the rule. Am I immune to word choice? No. And so whenever I go on to, I have decided in the past few months, at the ripe old age of 39, and I firmly recommend, I wish doing this much younger, I wish my emotions, as I've mentioned in the past, I have mood disorder not otherwise specified, severe emotional handicap, and it's never really gone away, and I'm probably sure the brain injuries, two of them, one when I was 8 and one when I was 34, 5, probably didn't help. And it's if I can separate my emotions from it, then it's much easier to deal with this. So when I'm dealing with online situations, places I can immediately step back from, or dealing with something while watching it on TV. Again, where I have that space, that divider between me and the content, then I'm good. Live situations, not so good. But pauses, yeah. So,
in other words, no, they're no better or worse at word choice immunity than a neurotypical.
Just different responses.
Just different response. Next question
is Aspies and sex. We're all over the board. Some of us like it, some of us don't.
Some are good at it, some are not. It all depends. Basically, just like with neurotypicals, practice. Practice and attention to detail.
Aspies tend to have less practice because we tend to have less
relationships that lead to sex. Now, granted, he spent a lot of time doing the man slut thing, having one night stands.
4 times. That was it.
That's still a wide range of time that you had that going on. There's a lot of other people that had a much higher number of partners, and that can lead to a higher capability in the bedroom.
I've had 4 relationships where there was sex.
However, Aspies who choose to pay attention to detail and have a partner that will, express their likes and needs and dislikes, etc., can lead to a very fulfilling sex life. So it requires paying attention.
Therefore, like every other relationship, communication is key, and we're all over the place. Aspies and sex. I know one guy. I think he's still a virgin at near 30. And he doesn't seem to clue in very easily because he genuinely doesn't want to, on some level, have it be his fault. And
anyways,
yeah, so we're all over the place. Next question. Aspies as parents. We do not have enough data to make the reliable video on that. Sorry.
We don't even have enough anecdotal data. We don't have enough people who have communicated their experiences as parents for Aspies.
If we were to give you an answer, it would literally be because we went and did the same work you would have had to have done, which is gone online and researched it a lot, and then come to your own opinion. David Finch talks about a lot in his book on his website. If I were to use one single source and recommend it, Aspies as parents, I would definitely recommend David Finch and his wife. So again, I recommend that only because I know that he's mentioned he has a few children, very few children, and he's very good at articulating his experiences.
And if you're an Aspie and are looking for information on how to be a good parent, go to your local, social work for families. Look up the classes on how to parent.
And hopefully they help.
Yes, hopefully they help.
They literally cater to the lowest common denominator. I've seen how to be a parent catering to tweakers because that's what it ended up being. Because tweakers were the ones that most commonly showed up. So it's basically useless to anybody else. Your mileage may vary. A library card will help. Good luck. Okay, Aspies and team sports. I played on teams. I was always much better in a place where, and I've spoken about this when I fought in the SDA, I was always much better in a place where I could function on my own. I've talked to a lot of Aspies that were pretty much the same way. Team sports. Let's talk about track and field, relay, running, discus. You're on a team, but you're not really on a team.
Relay you are.
Not really. Really, not really. What you're doing is you're running to a point, and then you're handing
something off.
That's not playing on a team sport. Having played in baseball, having played in soccer, I've done basketball. Anyone who's ever played these games, football, hockey, you know that you're basically
social and physical cues that are required for you to know to be able to accurately and adequately play.
Yeah, and having that you have to get happy off being on a team. I don't. Most Aspies I know don't get a high from being a part of a group. When I work in a kitchen,
there are exceptions.
When I work in a kitchen, I don't give a shit about being on a team. I genuinely do not give a shit about being on a team. And when I was in the military, the job I was doing pretty much was go over here, do this, and so there was no real team effort. There was a whole bunch of individuals working on individual tasks that happened to
coalesce into a whole.
So,
moving on.
She gets off on being on teams. I don't.
I get off on leading a team. There's a difference.
And motor control issues. Yes, we all have them. It's well documented. Gross motor control and fine motor control issues. Sports. Remember we just talked about sports? Sports help, but so do martial arts. So I can't draw or paint, but I know Aspies who can, and it's
basically
helped.
using the fine and gross motor skills on a regular basis in consistent methods will lead to improvement in that category.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for both neurotypicals and Aspies. That goes for autists.
Learning to ride a motorcycle helped me with my martial arts because both were fine and gross motor control. You know, learning that where you look, you go.
Mm-hmm.
And so having to basically learn how to get data about my environment without actually turning my head.
Yeah, so it's a learned skill. Both neurotypicals and Aspies have to work at it in order to become excellent at it. But that goes for pretty much anything in the world.
Self-stimming and social tics. Some people have social tics that are on the spectrum. Many do not. I don't.
Not really.
Not really.
But self-stimming includes things like you can see these dots on my arm. That's self-stimming from me going and scratching at myself because I'm thinking about something.
I have to get her to stop.
And that is a self-stimming tic.
You see
I am a neurotypical, and I still have it. There are those that are sitting there constantly twitching their hands, constantly moving their legs,
tapping
constantly doing this, clicking a pen.
Babies, neurotypical babies do this.
Yes.
We all do them. We're all humans. We all do them.
These are self-stimming methods. This is not exclusive to Aspies. This is not exclusive to autists. This is not exclusive to neurotypicals. This is a human thing.
Human thing. Okay, moving on. Aspies as elected officials. Could be good, could be bad. I think that an Aspie as president, probably a really terrible idea.
There's a lot of social requirements.
A lot of social requirements. What you need is you really do need that neurotypical. We're currently watching Designated Survivor, and President Kirkland is very human, very self-effacing. He understands political nuance. He understands social situations very, very well. He empathizes with people. He on a deep fundamental level
that most Aspies just don't have.
Aspies just can't. And you know what?
A lot of neurotypicals can't either.
Neurotypicals can't.
It takes a very specific type of person.
What we need in a president is someone who can, which is why our current president is a bit of a disaster dumpster fire, and the previous one was better. In fact, all of the previous ones were better, and I didn't even really like the other three main options in the last presidential election. Two would have done an all right job. One was a nutbag. But they were all better empathizers than the current president. Would they have done necessarily a better job? Don't know. They didn't win. That's a different discussion. That's about empathy. Current president's bad at it. All presidents before, probably good at it. Presidents after, probably good at it. But like president, mayor, governor.
High-ranking officials are probably going to be bad for an Aspie.
Not high-ranking. Executive branch. However,
low-level stuff?
Not even low-level stuff. Judicial and legislative. Yes.
Where social is less of a requirement than the rules.
I think, honestly, I think if you have to do social, the less you have to control on that social side, the better. So I think a House of Representatives may be possible, but a senator would not. Because a senator has to represent the whole state. The House representative in the U.S. has to do a smaller area. However, treasurer, secretary of the Treasury, things where hard numbers are good, that's fine. Judges, more difficult. I don't think a Supreme Court bench is in the future. Maybe an appeals court where you really have to weigh what it's already come before. So you're judging the facts in front of you. I think that could
be
work.
Good.
So it's very dependent. The less social there is, the more rules, the better. The more black and white, the better. I think a city councilman is absolutely possible. Do I think that there are Aspies that are elected? Probably. I haven't done a survey. There's 535 members of Congress. There's how many mayors?
I don't even know.
How many city councils? How many? There's 50 state legislatures.
There's a lot of elected officials out there.
Thousands of them. The odds of one of them being an Aspie are actually pretty good. whether they know it or not. Um,
Okay, so
yeah, by the way, Aspie's as for strangers. Probably not a bad choice. Uh, Asperger's in women. It does present differently. And because of the different the different expectations, the different social expectations.
Women are expected to be much better at social situations and are taught from a young age.
So they're
and
better.
In fact, Dr. Temple talks about
Temple Graston?
Yeah. Grayson or Graston?
I don't know.
Dr. Temple, who is an Aspie and very much an expert in her field in livestock raising, etc., talks about how in the 1950s, children were taught social behavior. They were taught by rote how to do social situations. And that's the only way she was able to figure out how to do it, was she was taught by rote, which a lot of kids nowadays don't get. Neither neurotypical nor Aspie. And so she knew how to behave, and so she didn't find out that she was an Aspie until much later in life.
Oddly, this is one that people are not taught. I don't know, they once were, but that people are not taught is one of the main reasons why my mother, who taught middle school for like 7-8 years, actually taught self-contained, severely emotionally handicapped children. So she taught middle school special ed for 7 years in a classroom where the normal burnout and run screaming for the hills time is 1 or 2 years. Thought that teaching social skills as a class at the middle school level should be highly important and should not be optional. And she was greatly disappointed. I think she may have a point there. But yeah, Asperger's in women. I have a friend, she's a high-functioning autistic, and she talked about how this is, just much more difficult. And we each experienced different challenges, and a lot of it was based upon our me being a dude and her being a girl. Simple as that. Also, I'm about 10, 12 years older, so there was also that difference. So
for women, it's usually easier to hide simply because we are taught the social constructs that we're supposed to behave within. Now that we're gearing away from, oh, you can't treat that girl just like a girl, you can't say, oh, she has to have this toy, this toy, this toy, that may actually be detrimental to Aspie women as they grow up, because they won't have that
freedom.
Strong,
you can be whatever you want. Which is
not good for Aspies, who really do need a rigid structure to learn behaviors that neurotypicals learn, by osmosis, basically. So that may well become a serious problem in the next 20 years as these children are growing up, but they hadn't been discovered as being an Aspie until they were like 7 or 8.
The side effects of everyone wanting everything to be politically correct and socially this and socially that, there are prices to pay with everything, and this may be one of them. Like, for example, and this would be to give you an idea of what we're thinking, our headspace on this. I know exactly where she is. Marriage has its benefits. Is when I was in school, what I was taught was, go find your passion. Follow your passion. Be employed in your passion. Do your passion. And I didn't have one. Still don't. Never have.
I was lucky I did.
Yeah. And my dad couldn't get it because he's a lawyer. And he knew he wanted to be a lawyer from age 5. Why didn't I know what I wanted to be from age 5? I thought about your passion. And I get it. My dad wanted to be a lawyer or an actor. He decided that lawyers got to eat regularly. That's right. And if something my eyes, apologies. And so he knew, and that's great. And it worked out great for him. I didn't. So follow your passion was detrimental because the message should have been
find something you're good at and can tolerate.
No. Follow your passion if you can. But if you cannot, it's perfectly fine and just as good to find something that you can tolerate and pays the bills. The difference between those two messages, follow your passion and follow your passion if you can, but if you can't, it would have been the difference between what I make now, which is about $22,000 a year, and probably 60 or 70. thousand since I was 22. I'm 39 now.
That's a lot of money.
That's near $1 million.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And that's that. Okay, moving on. Conciseness, getting to the point. We have a problem. Watch any of my videos. This is the 87th, 80th. It's in the upper 80s. We'll check when we.
You guys like
it.
to ramble. End of discussion.
We like to ramble.
Move on.
We have a problem. So should we be getting to the point more often?
Yes.
Last one. Last one on the list.
Sarcasm.
Sarcasm. I have a problem with it. I don't always see it where it is. I know a lot of neurotypicals do, but we Aspies have a problem. We don't get it. Why? Because of that black and white. We see things as they are. We have a hard time reading between the lines or past it.
You hear the words. You don't hear
the meaning.
You don't hear the meaning. You also don't hear the vocal tone or the facial expression. For example, Jewish humor.
Jewish humor. There's a Wikipedia page on it. You can type into Wikipedia Jewish humor. It's a very long page. It's got many good jokes. Totally worth some of your time. Go read it.
An example of that is...
How many Jewish grandmas does it take to change a light bulb? It's okay, I'm right, I sit in the dark, all alone, no one calls, no one arrives, no one comes by.
Alright, I'll change the light bulb.
Yes. Jewish guilt, Jewish sarcasm.
Very similar.
Yeah. Or, it's the Tsarist regime in Russia. And, there's a murdered girl, a murdered Russian girl. And the Soviet policeman comes by and he looks at the Jew and he says, "I'm sure you don't know anything about this, do you?" And the old Jewish man, he looks up and he goes, "I don't know anything, but in the end you'll probably blame the Jews and the chimney sweeps." And the Russian officer goes, "Why the chimney sweeps?" And the Jewish guy goes, "Why the Jews?"
So, sarcasm is something that requires the ability to read vocal tone and facial expression as well as body language. So, not an easy thing for Aspies.
To read into the social situation. Like those jokes I could write a lot of the jokes that require Jewish sarcasm to be understood down, hand them to an Aspie who is not a Jew, so it didn't have that, or even one that is, because I missed a lot of them. And they may not understand why it's funny because of the sarcasm, because of the implied social situation.
So, that wraps up our Omnibus episode today. Yay, Omnibus! All done. And yes, we apologize for this being a really long video, but we covered a lot of different topics. And, if you guys have something that you genuinely need more information on that we can provide, that we didn't state, we got nothing, then please write in the comments and we will get back with you. Have a good one!
I'll have to go teach.